All right. Peace and greetings, YouTubers. So, welcome to another edition of In the News. Feels good to be back. If you follow my social media or the community page for this channel, I told you all that I was going to be on the West Coast for a little bit. I took a nice 13-day vacation. For those who just want to get to the news stories, I do have timestamps in the description, so just utilize those to find which parts of the video you would actually like to see if you don't want to hear my little mini rant about my trip for the next 5 minutes. Anyway, for those who are still here, I just needed some escapism. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes we're working so hard, we don't even realize how burnout we are until we take a break. And that's literally where I was. There's just been so much to go down in the last few months, both good and bad and terrible. And so I was like, you know what? I just need a little bit of me time, just some escapism from everything. Just, self-care is everything. In order to give your best, you got to be at your best. That's why I believe in sleep. All right. But anyway, really great time. I started off in the Bay Area. I have a lot of family out there. So I went out, like Richmond, Oakland, went to San Francisco, had a great time. I did my very first radio interview as far as promoting my music and everything like that over in Berkeley. The great people over at KPFA and the host Queen Janine, it was a really great time. Really great interview. Had a lot of fun. As soon as the link to that interview is available, I will gladly share it with you all. I think the station is 94.1 for those in the Bay. I don't think it's aired yet. She said she'd give me the insight once it airs. In addition to that, one of the funnier moments, we randomly went, or at least I randomly went, held up this karaoke bar, like me and my cousins. We all went to this karaoke bar, and it was funny because initially, nobody signed up to perform, except for me. Of course, karaoke is my favorite thing to do. So, I swear, if I ever do a meet and greet event or something else, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a karaoke bar, because I think that's fun. That's where everybody can let loose. But anyway, get to this karaoke bar. Nobody signed up to perform. So I finished my first song, and so I'm looking, and the DJ, because he doesn't want the show to end, he's like, I was like, oh, okay, how much Bobby Brown you got? And so I did the Bobby Brown song, and then I finished Bobby, and nobody else has still come up to sign up. And he was like, oh, okay, what Maxwell, you got extension? All right, let's do that one. And so I literally did 4 songs in a row. In my head, it was my own HBO special. In my head, I was at the Staples Center. There was 20,000 people in the audience, and I had on a headset mic, and it was pyrotechnics and dancers and stuff. I was having a ball. And then towards the end, I was like, all right, I'm gonna slow things down a bit. We're gonna do a ballad. Let's do a ballad, y'all. What kind of Teddy P you got over there? Let's slow things down a little bit. It was so much fun. And then, of course, there was a real singer who shows up and ruins all the fun. And so this guy came out. I don't even know if he just got divorced or what, but he came in there singing with some conviction. He came in there with one of them grown man voices, because in my head I sound like a teenager when I sing. He had he did this Barry White song, which was oh shoot, that's not even my lane right there. So he goes in, baby, there's something wrong with me, and all the people, every time. I don't know the rest of the word. I was like, now I done did 4 songs for y'all. Y'all didn't do that screaming for me, but anyway, it was a lot of fun. And so the Bay was a good time. And then after the Bay, I actually went to LA. I went, and the funniest part was I didn't tell my grandfather I was coming. I just literally got off the plane and went straight to his house. And so that was a really great surprise. My grandfather's 85. He's my last living grandparent. So anytime I have the option to go in that area, I always go and visit him. LA was wild, by the way. I'm not going to tell too much of LA. Just know it was wild. Somehow I ended up in a stolen car that I was driving. That'd be a podcast episode. And then get this part. Then in the stolen car, there was a whole box of illegal substances in the trunk, like pills. I'm like, this is not the life I live. This is not the life I live. And mind you, I was just going to CVS. I didn't know the car that they told me to go ahead and take had all that in it. I was like, are you serious? Because, of course, there's other people. I got a bunch of family in LA, too. I was too done. Told y'all, my family comes from all kind of extremities. I love everybody, but dang, I said, never again. Don't you ever let me borrow your car and you got all that crap in it. That was a felony waiting to happen. You know what kind of mess that would have been? Y'all will look on the news and I'm on there and they done pulled me over and I got all this crap. I was like, what? Okay, this is wild, but LA was a lot of fun. I was really happy to see my grandfather. And then I finished in Vegas. Had a great time. I went to the Metamorphosis show. That was a fun show. And then Janet was literally she was literally an arm's length away from me. I was like, okay, this is dope. And somehow I got into the after party, and it was she was in there and Mary J. Blige. I couldn't get to her physically though. The worst part was the party. I stayed at the party till 1 in the morning, and I was like, all right, I'm going upstairs to go to sleep because I stayed at the casino. And as soon as I had laid my head in the pillow, it was Janet Jackson. She's finally at the party. I was like, oh shoot. I went right back downstairs, and literally Janet Jackson was in the section that I had just left, and they had it all taped off with her and security. I'm like, whatever. But it was a great time. Anyway, let's get to some of these stories. So yeah, that's why I was going for so long. I know some of y'all were cussing me out and the worst part was all the good stories were happening while I was not here. Everything from the Epstein thing and Jay-Z, and I was like, oh, man, next time I'm going to make sure I bring all my equipment if I travel again. Anyway, I wanted to start off with this story just because it's pretty much a trending topic, and I think it is a topic of discussion, even though I'm kind of tired of having this discussion. But I don't know, this is coming out of Oklahoma. I don't know if you saw this clip, but there's a news anchor who ends up getting in a bunch of trouble because they were doing a news story. It was a white woman and a black man. They're doing a news story about the Oklahoma City Zoo, and there's this clip where, I don't know, they show a monkey or something. And so towards the end of the story, the woman, her name was Alex Housden. I think that's her name. Yeah, Alex Housden. Alex Housden, she goes and she says this line about like, oh, he sort of looks like you. You know, that kind of line. You know what they always say, because, you know, there's always that correlation that some people like to try to make. And so she said it as a joke. Of course, there was going to be backlash and outrage. And so, you know, the next day, they were like, we got to do some damage control. So they propped her up there with the guy, and then she does the apology. So let's just go to a piece of the apology, and then we'll talk.
I'm here this morning because I want to apologize. Not only to my coworker, Jason, but to our entire community. I said something yesterday that was inconsiderate, that was inappropriate, and I hurt people. And I want you to know, I understand how much I hurt you out there and how much I hurt you. I love you so much, and you have been one of my best friends for the past year and a half, and I would never do anything on purpose to hurt you. And I love our community, and I want you all to know, from the bottom of my heart, I apologize for what I said. I know I was wrong, and I am so sorry.
Okay, so this is a lot to unpack, so I'm going to try to package this the right way to the best of my ability here. So let me say this. Yes, there are moments where people make mistakes, or they say things, or they slip up and say something a little out of pocket, and they do everything in their power to make things right because they really didn't have any ill will or ill intentions. I understand that. However, in the context of this story, Alex is a news anchor, which means that while she's working within the scope of her employment, everybody up top, as far as the producers and her bosses and all the sponsors and everything, they expect that if you're going to be in the news anchor seat, that you are well-rounded with how the world works. You understand current world affairs. You understand history. You understand context. You understand the climate of the city in which you are reporting. You understand any and everything that could possibly shake the table, and you have been trained to be quick on your feet and not make these kind of slip-ups. Because one, they're trusting you to be on live TV and represent their brand. They're trusting you to portray and put out all these different news stories every single day for at least 1 to 2 hours for the next 10, 15, 20 years, or as long as they think that you're going to look good on camera. You know, there's that, because, you know, in this day and age when it comes to news reporting, as far as anchors, you know, one wrong slip up, next thing you know, you're an on-scene reporter, and now you have to go to the live scene of the Revolutionary War reenactment parade and pretend to be excited at 4 in the morning, or you got to go stand outside at 11:30 p.m. and report about the fertilizer factory that burned down. You got to stand out there and smell all that. You know, it's really easy to lose that anchor seat. So when you're in that anchor seat, you internally already do everything in your power to not mess that job up. And so I always say, like, people like somebody like a news anchor, they are already trained in what you call right place at the right time thinking, as far as comments that will come quick on their feet. A perfect example of that, here's an example. I cuss and use profanity like a sailor when nobody's around. When I'm in my car, I like all the hard words. You cut me off if you want to. If I'm already going 75 in a 50, which is not good, you don't need to be on my bumper, and now I'm cussing you out. Like, I'm saying all of that. However, for some reason, when I get around my mother, or if I'm at work and I'm around the kids, there's never going to be a slip up of anything out of pocket to come out of my mouth. Like, one, because my mother is like a really religious and church lady and all that stuff. Like, I have never used profanity in front of my mother. I can talk a million words a minute, nothing will slip out, because unconsciously, I've already conditioned myself to understand that when I'm around my mom, there's no such thing as slip ups, because I don't want to offend her. Same thing with the kids. You know, I can be thinking one thing, and I don't know, the kid could, spill a big old cup of red paint right on my brand new shirt, and I want to... However, because I recognize that in the scope of my employment, I'm supposed to have understanding and compassion for children, and I have to also recognize that children are going to act as children, so I can't hold them to the same standard as an adult, that I can automatically block out what I really want to say and say, oh, okay, well, you know, things happen. Let's go get some paper towels, you know? So with a news anchor, a comment like, this one sort of looks like you, when you've just watched this whole story about the zoo, meaning the story's been on at least 30 seconds. 30 seconds, you see these apes and everything like that. A comment like "you sort of look like one" is not a slip up. That's not a slip up of somebody mixing up who and whom, or somebody who says, I could care less, when in reality you're supposed to say I couldn't care less. It's not no crap like that. A comment about, "oh, this one sort of looks like you," you sat there and that was already pondering in your head. That's a way that you've already been thinking long before. So that's not a slip up. That's how you really feel. I don't care if she said that she and the news anchor, that they have been best friends for a year. Okay, cool. And then really what I want to get into is the crying. I mean this from a place of love, but it is so hard for me to have empathy when white women cry when they're caught in the wrong on a lot of things. Mainly because white women's tears have always been used as weapons against other people, especially black men and black women. And so as I watched the apology, I started thinking, I was like, you know what? She's not even crying because she's sorry about what she said. She's thinking about her job, because she knows that if the sponsors start pulling out, if the producers are pissed off, if the execs aren't happy, if the demographics as far as viewership starts to shift or go down when she's on the air, she knows that she's out of a job. Or she knows that she's going to be that on-scene reporter, and they're going to have her out there at the bee factory getting stung, doing a hands-on activity at the bee festival at 5 in the morning. So she's thinking of that. She's not even sad or sorry about what she said. If she is, it's like priority number 8 on the list of things to be worried about. And so really, she's bringing on the tears to protect herself, which goes right back to what I said about a lot of times white women using their tears as weapons against other people. Because can we talk optics? Let's just talk about, let's say I take a screenshot or a still of the picture. I'm going to put it on the side. If I take that still and you see that she's crying and he's sitting there, and I go and I give that picture to a random person who has not seen the backstory of this, who has no idea what's happening, automatically, because of how we're already conditioned in this country, because this is what we are in America today, a person, depending on how they see the world, automatically, they're going to assume that something has happened to her, and the empathy automatically goes to her. It doesn't go to him. He's the aggressor. He looks crazy. He looks this, that, and the third. Automatically, oh my God, we feel horrible for her. Like, that's where we're at. And so it doesn't help they already got him propped up there like Carlton Banks from Fresh Prince. And of course, he gave this old diplomatic, we are the world response. This could be an opportunity to learn and a learning experience. And I'm like, how many learning opportunities we gonna have? Like, y'all are grown. And it's not like these are some 20-year-olds. Yeah, they're older than me. I know that. So, how many opportunities for a lesson are we going to have? Especially something like this with race. You already know the context of race in this country when you talk about the correlation that people try to make between black people and monkeys. I think I've talked about it in a few videos. I know I talked about it in one of these in the news videos where we talked about the H&M thing where they had that boy with the coolest monkey on the planet shirt. I think I talked about it in the Central Park 5 video. I know I talked about it in my standardized testing video. I think I talked about it in the Megyn Kelly video. Like, it's we talked about it a lot, but at this day and age, if you're a news anchor, you know good and well the history of this country when it comes to imaging and stereotypes and generalizations about different groups of people other than yourself. So you don't get the luxury to sit there and cry and have everybody feel bad for you. So it was really hard for me to even empathize with the tears. I'm like, I guess. I just felt like the crying was more so for her job. It wasn't because she really felt bad for what she said. But at the end of the day, like, that's her relationship with that co-anchor and where they're at with that news station. Because I think he gave a very diplomatic response because he's thinking of his own career. He doesn't want to mess up too much because for him, unfortunately, in his situation, if he stands there and really says how he feels about what she did, because he told her a little something. It was a very safe way of doing it. Automatically he becomes the aggressor. That's where we're at. Like, true story. I know the story's getting a little long, but I got to get it all out. Y'all ain't seen me in 13, 14 days anyway, so let's talk for real, okay? True story. Back when I first started my job, and I can tell this story because most of the people in this story no longer work there. So we were in this meeting. It was me, my coworker, who's this black woman, my boss, and it was like the staff of another center, like 5 people, right? And so we're having this meeting. One of the women on the other staff from this other center, this white woman, so she just did this long spill about how, she was going to need more time during her lunch break because she needs to go home and walk her dog, and I have to walk my dog. If I can't walk my dog, so she does all that. And so she had all this energy. Like, she was in here thinking she's just punking everybody. And I'm sitting here looking like, boy, I wish I had that luxury. And I need to go feed my fish. My goldfish need to be fed. So I need to drive all the way back home. But anyway, so the people at the other center had planned this big, elaborate event where they were going to have to transport kids, because y'all know I work with kids. They're going to have to transport their kids to some event. Now, none of them were available to do this event, and this was going to be on a Saturday, a day that we technically don't work, which means we'd all have to be doing this on our own time, because when you're salaried and you don't get overtime. Anything you do on the weekend is just out of the goodness in your heart. And so none of them could do this elaborate thing that they just planned. And so they thought that they could just convince me and my coworker to take it on. And we're like, no, because we have other things we're doing. I was going to Seattle that week because my little brother was graduating from high school. And then, she has her own thing, my coworker. And so we're kind of like, no, we can't do it. And we're like, why can't you do it? And they all of them just gave us reasons why they couldn't. And I can't do this. And I got this group. And I'm Toastmasters. Okay, fine, whatever. And so boss lady jumps in, our boss. And she jumps in and goes on this whole spill about being team players and not, thinking, you got to think bigger than yourself. Mind you, this is directed to me and the coworker, but it's really directed to the coworker because one, I'm not even going to be in the state anyway, so it's really all towards her. We got to be more, just intentional about, making sure we're supporting, blah, 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 blah. So we get chewed out, and we just sitting there looking. And so the meeting keeps going, like 30 minutes pass. My coworker don't like sitting on nothing. She was like, the hell with this. And so she's like, I got to say one more thing. So she goes on this whole spill about, and mind you, she says no names. She speaks in nothing but generalizations and parables and fables and hypothetical situations and in symbolism. Like, I have to really put that there so you recognize that nobody was attacked. And she goes on a spill about, I don't understand how y'all are saying team work this, team player this, team this. How does that look where you plan something that's going to be inconveniencing for somebody else and then you're going to expect them to do it because all of a sudden, the benefits or the privileges that you have won't allow you to come do something that you signed up to put on, and now all of a sudden the burden is on me to come and do something I'm not going to get paid for. I got to go and take some other kids I don't even know to some event that y'all plan on my day off as if I don't have to still, take care of my own family and everything else. Out of nowhere, the white woman from the other center, mind you, she's like 6'2", out of nowhere, gets up, and mind you, my coworker was addressing everybody indirectly. Woman gets up, just runs out the door, like literally runs, and I'm like, what? And then as she runs, everybody else, all the other people, they all run after her to make sure she's okay. I'm like, and so now we're sitting in the room, it's just me, the coworker, and boss lady, and we're just all looking at each other, and we're looking at boss lady like, you not gonna get your staff together? And I was looking at my coworker like, you should have started crying too, just to see what was going to happen. Like, they all ran out after her. And I was like, wait a minute. Now, 30 minutes earlier, when you were doing a spill about why you were going to be taking all this extra time off to make sure that you can walk your dog and it is what it is. Otherwise, she can just quit and it's nothing, all the energy then right then and there. However, when the facts start getting spit out, when the truth starts coming out, you want to run out and cry. Okay? I can't do it. It's kind of like, I don't know if you follow me on Twitter. I randomly had this tweet that went viral. And then I was talking about that movie, The Color of Friendship on Disney, where that's that movie where they have the white South African student who comes to America and she ends up living with the black family. And it's around the same time Stephen Biko gets killed. And so they have this argument about, just race and politics. And then the girl runs out because she didn't like what was said. And she literally turned the whole conversation into something individual when the other girl was literally talking about just apartheid and everything, and white was screwed up. And the thing was, the white girl's dad was the police officer, so he might have been one of the people that might have killed Stephen Biko. Like, hot mess. But anyway, that's what it reminds me of. So I was like, those tears, I'm good on. I'm sorry. It's hard for me. I can't feel that bad for you. And it was such a setup how they just have it propped up there. Because again, if the tables were turned, if it were him crying, he could be the laughing stock. Because black people, we're not allowed to have emotion. Especially black men, we're not allowed to cry. As children, we're told to suck it up, man up. Unfortunately, that's why we're punching walls now. But, it is what it is. Anyway, speaking of additional privileges, I don't know if we've seen this clip. There's a clip floating around. It's actually coming out of Virginia where there was this man. He killed 2 people, including a child. Terrible, right? And so, the police are after him. For some reason, he has no clothes on. And so this man is literally running and the police are trying to chase him. Like, look at the clip. Look. Now he's chasing an officer. Look at that. Anyway. So he's running and everything like that. And he randomly goes. He also goes and he chokes this random bystander for a minute. Like, the police are giving him all the options in the world to somehow surrender. And then finally they take him down safely and he's put in cuffs and he's not shot and killed. And it was an interesting dynamic because in the same breath, there's another clip floating around where you have the police literally choking a kid until he's unconscious. I don't know the backstory as far as why they were after him or whatever was the reasoning, but it's like you see 2 dynamics again, and it literally goes back to what I was just talking about in the last story, how, the same offense, the same reaction, it just comes with a different response depending on how you look. And that's something that's just very interesting to look at. And while we're speaking of choking, I am happy that finally the officer who killed Eric Garner was fired, even though you see that They have a whole GoFundMe to make sure he's well off. And, a lot of the NYPD is really pissed off about that. And they're saying that the people are turning their backs on the police and this, that, and the third. And again, when you're talking about the Eric Garner situation, the issue that I had was this. The man told you at least 9 times he couldn't breathe. And y'all continue to do what you were trying to do. Because at that point, if you watch the clip, and I'm not posting it because it pisses me off watching it, and I've done a video on this subject before, at that point, right before you notice that he's dead, all I see is ego and pride with the police officers. At this point, like, a lot of police officers have this point of no return state that they get into, where even if they're wrong, even if they recognize that they can bring it back down, the ego and pride has already jumped in. They're going to continue to get their way until they, get whatever it is. It's the same thing with the police officer that dragged the little girl from the pool party, the one that went and did the barrel roll like he was in freaking Die Hard over some teenagers at a pool in the suburbs because, the neighbors didn't like too many black kids in the water. It made them nervous, and so they called the police. You continue to see that. So, I'm happy for the family because unfortunately, everybody's mad and they're saying, oh, everything, they're turning their backs on the police. And what about the man's family? I'm like, it's not like he's going to jail. The courts or, everybody already decided there was no reason to indict or charge him on anything. Or, he got off. And so literally, okay, he's losing his job. But with that, we've seen many instances where police have lost their jobs for doing questionable things in regards to police brutality, and then they get another job in another department. You saw that the officer that killed Tamir Rice, I think he has a new position. Betty Shelby, I believe, has a new position. She was the one who killed, I want to say she killed Terrence Crutcher. Like, a lot of these police officers, they end up getting positions and promotions and everything at the key to the city. They just get a new job somewhere else. So, interesting, right? Crazy dynamic. So this next story is one that is just terrible in general. It reminds you that society can be trash and that some people are just horrible. And I really hate that, I really hate it when the vulnerable are attacked or are targeted. And it's even worse when they're trying to be made whole, but there's not a push to make sure they're made whole because people don't value them or see them as worthy enough to put the effort into. Like, that's terrible. Anyway, I got this story from blackamericaweb.com. It says, 2 black male victims who received settlements over sexual abuse allegations against Catholic priests are coming forward, revealing that they were paid far less than white victims. The Associated Press reports the diocese secretly paid 2 black men from Mississippi $15,000 each, requiring them to both sign non-disclosure agreements. According to CBS, in 2006, the Catholic Diocese of Jackson reportedly settled lawsuits brought on by 19 different victims. Of those survivors, 17 are white and were paid at least $250,000. Some got as much as $1.3 million in similar settlements. One victim, LaJarvis D. Love, who accused 2 Catholic priests of sexual abuse when he was 9 years old, received a $15,000 payout during a meeting at an IHOP restaurant. Let me fast forward a little bit. Love's cousin, Joshua K. Love, who also experienced physical and sexual abuse, was initially offered only $10,000. He eventually settled his abuse claim for $15,000. They felt that they could treat us that way because we're poor and black, he said. There's another part in here. This is a quote from, I guess this was kind of like one of the lawyers for them. He said this line, well, we don't have lawyers. We felt like we had to take what we could. The jacked up part with all of that. One, sexual abuse is something that money can't fix already. We understand that. But in this society, money talks. And money can somewhat get people into a place where at least they have something they can live off of as they try to rebuild themselves. That money can help them go to therapy. That money can do a little something. And so the fact that you have all of these victims of an hideous crime. People have instilled and trusted the people with their children because they were told, well, these are the people who are the moral compass of society because these are people who are from these different, religious organizations, and this is the Catholic school and the Catholic this and blah, 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 blah. And people have trusted your children with them. And in addition to that, I think the bigger issue I have when you're talking about sexual abuse coming out of religious institutions is that in addition to doing the sexual abuse, a lot of times there's almost that mind control element. There's that element of getting into somebody's psyche as far as what they believe in spiritually or what they may believe in as far as how they see things in the world. And all of that gets tarnished and screwed over. And people use that vulnerability as a weapon or as an opportunity to go and do terrible things. And so you mean to tell me, these people are sexually abused as little kids by these priests, by an organization or the Catholic Church that has billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. And they got $15,000 each. And then on top of that, not only that, homeboy didn't even get to go to a nice restaurant to get his check. He went to IHOP. So he's sitting in there with the high school students that just came back from prom at 2 in the morning to get his $15,000. You know, like, it just goes to show you that depending on who you are and how you look and how much you have, that determines how society is going to treat you even when you're treated wrong. And I think that's some crap. That is some BS. Because, you know, I just started thinking about these big pharma suits. Because, you know, you just saw Purdue is willing to offer anywhere between 10 and $12 billion for the 2,000 lawsuits that are going on as far as the opioid crisis. All right. Even if you were to take the two, and of course all 2,000 suits, I don't think they're all getting the same thing. But let's just say they did. Everybody's at least getting 6 figures. At least. Some could get easily can get 7, you know, upwards of like $5 million if you broke it down and did the math, at least, depending on who's getting what, how that's set up. And that's just that company. Then you have Johnson & Johnson, $575 million. And again, it just goes to show you how society treats people differently, because the opioid crisis, it was what? It's a drug issue. It's people who have addiction. And so in this era of the opioid addiction, it's considered something that people need to be, you know, rehabilitated from. And there's an element of understanding and there's an element of compassion. However, we just go back 30 years to the crack era. Everybody was getting locked up. Everybody was getting, you know, families being broken up. And the thing about the crack era, if we really want to be honest, is it was something that was pretty much funded by the government anyway. It was a great way to keep the war on drugs going. It was a great way to bring revenue as far as hiring new police, hiring new, like even the new gadgets that they had, the little robots and the tanks that could go and kick doors in, all of that. That's money into the economy, because now you need to go to these tech companies to build this new technology. Like, it had all of that. And when you look at the fact that pretty much the war on drugs was kind of like, it's like a catch-22 where, okay, we're going to drop some drugs in these neighborhoods, but then we're also going to arrest the people, because we're going to drop a drug that's so addictive, that's so uncontrollable as far as once you start using it, that, you know, people will just be burned for life. So we'll always have a reason to go and arrest people, and it can just keep going, and it'll be a great political statement. It'll be a great way to get people on our side for the next election. Like, all of that. And so my question is like, so do all the victims of the crack epidemic get to sue the government and get a check as well? Because if you're talking about big pharma and you're talking about the opioid crisis, let's talk about the demographics of who is actually the victims here. You know, the majority of the people that are victims of the opioid crisis are not black folks, it's white folks. And not only that, it's not even poor white folks either. Yes, you have the meth heads who are really on it, but now you're getting into middle class, upper class white America. These are the teachers, the doctors, the firefighters, the librarians, the people who work in these, you know, tech companies and everything like that. And so when you're talking about the origins of how they got onto what it is, like some of the people who end up getting on opioids, it's because their healthcare fell apart. So they had healthcare, they start getting prescriptions, because a lot of these drugs are pretty much opioids anyway. Something like Adderall has almost the same contents as meth. You know what I mean? There's a lot of drugs, and what they did, because heroin pretty much falls in that same boat as well. When heroin became outlawed, a lot of these larger companies, all they did was pretty much go and get the same contents, just under different names, and found contents that could still stimulate the brain in the same way as heroin, just with a different name or a different chemical makeup, and they put it out there and put it into pills. And so now you have Oxycontin and you have Adderall and you have all these different pills and stuff that people were taking, and people were, I don't know, they got in a car accident, had some back spasms, they had to get Adderall, this, that, and the third. Some people's healthcare fell apart, and so they could no longer afford these pills that they became dependent on. So what do? You go back to the street and you get heroin. Same high. Doesn't matter. Like 80% of heroin users started with prescription drugs. So they started off taking whatever pills they were taking, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if they couldn't afford it. I don't know if it was a gateway drug. I don't know if they just got desperate. But 80% of the people who started, using, I guess, heroin today, they started with prescription drugs, which is absolutely crazy. And so, as you're looking at the demographics, and one of the more interesting bits too, because I was looking at some research, and like even in New York, opioid deaths between 2010 and 2015 have increased 300%. So it's like some serious stuff. And see, that's what happens when you have corporate greed. When you go out of your way and, people have certain injuries, but you overdrug them because you need to just go ahead and get you a paycheck. You need to make sure that you're going to get enough to meet the bottom line for your budget as far as whatever company you have. And so you overprescribe all of these drugs that people are going to become hooked to. Because the thing with drugs, now I'm not a drug addict, so please don't take this as me speaking from experience. This is just me, lots of reading and just experience as far as people I know. Because like I said, my family comes from many extremities, so I've seen things firsthand. Again, but going back to that, like with giving people some of these prescriptions, you're giving somebody, I don't know, it's a prescription because they had they had some surgery. Now they're hooked to whatever they're hooked on. And with a lot of these drugs, when you have so much of that in your bloodstream for so many moments or for such an extended period of time, it gets to the point where your body has pretty much recalibrated itself to operate with whatever substance that is being in your bloodstream. That is now your new norm. And when you don't have that norm, your body hates you. Your body fights you. You start going through withdrawal. You start losing your mind. That's how you always see like crackheads on the street, kind of. I don't like the phrase crackhead, but still, like when we had the cocaine versus crack epidemic kind of going on. And so you never really saw a lot of cocaine addicts walking around shaking. Why? Because they could afford to have it. Usually cocaine, it was an issue of class when you're talking crack versus cocaine. It's a class issue. Most people who use cocaine can afford to use it. Something like crack, pretty much the same high, a little bit more intense, but it's also cheaper. And so when you started seeing all these people on the street, and families getting broken up and everything like that, it's because the people couldn't afford to maintain their habits. Something like crack, as long as you can afford to keep using it, you're functional. However, when you can't use it anymore, but your body's like, I need it, where is it at? You know what I mean? And so you're looking at what's happening, and it's like, wow. So you had all these people who were vilified, locked away, families ruined forever. And I think with crack too, crack just burned holes in people's brains. It had all kind of crap going on. And so all of those people, there were all kind of campaigns, and Just Say No and Dare came out. And we talked about that clip with George Bush before where they staged the situation with the crack being sold by the White House. Really, when they set this man up, like they pushed this whole agenda out and instilled fear into people and did all of that. However, on the flip side, and really that was because you saw the victims or the users, a lot of them were black or they were poor, or they were part of the Latino community. And so now you flip the script, and now it's come to mainland America, come to white folks. And so none of the punitive aspects are there. And I think, I will say it's good that we're recognizing that drug use is something that you need. It's a health concern, but it's like you need to remedy all these people that you vilified and locked up for the same issue that these people in 2019 are having. That's only fair. And so again, you're watching these big companies give billions of dollars to these victims who were all strung out on whatever, but the victims who were all strung out with literally the same high just 30 years earlier, they're locked up, their families are gone. It's nobody's being made whole. Like, that's an issue. And so that just goes to show you where society stands when it comes to how they remedy folks, where society values people. And it's a sad aspect. That's why that line where the guy said we just had to take what we could. That's the experience for a lot of people, and it sucks. Even when you're done wrong, sometimes it's like people have to bite the bullet and take some crappy settlement because they can't even afford to get a lawyer to go fight the case. That's really what that's about with the two Mississippi individuals. Pretty much they couldn't afford lawyers to go and meet with the lawyers of the Catholic organization that they had in Mississippi, and so they had to just get what they could get. And that sucks. You know what I mean? So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, let's move on. All right, let me shift gears for 1 second so we're not pissed off the whole video. On Showtime, there's a really great documentary on Motown. I believe it's called Hitsville. Definitely check it out if you get a chance. It's a really great watch, especially if you're a music head and you like to know the behind the scenes of how people do things. My only critique would be I just wish they could have gone more in depth to everything that happened after the mid-70s. It really centers on the makings of Motown and how they started in those first initial years. So it really focuses on the 1960s and the first few years of the 1970s, but it doesn't really go into depth with everything after like 1975 or the 80s or anything after that. And I know they were trying to capture a specific era or what you could call the golden era of Motown, but it was kind of like it was going so good and then it just ended. I was like, wait, that's it? But there's some great stories in it. It was a great watch. I really enjoyed watching that. So if you have Showtime, definitely check it out. Cable's so high these days. I'm about to cancel my crap because it's getting too high, man. They want to charge you a whole car payment and insurance and like everything else just for some channels you don't even be watching. I'm like, I'm not even home like that to watch that much TV. And then some people had asked me. I know I did not do a review of the VMAs. My bad. But I did watch the highlights that I did like. Of course, I enjoyed Missy's portion. That's the only reason I watched it first. Because initially, when they gave the lineup of who was going to be there, all I saw was like Taylor Swift and Camilla and Shawn Mendes and all these people I'm not really big on. So I was like, I don't even think I'm watching this. And then last minute, I guess they got enough complaining. They rolled out the extra promo like, okay, let's bring out the other acts. And I was like, oh, also it's going to be Big Sean and Normani and Lizzo and her and some other folks. I was like, okay, we're here. But no, I like Missy's performance. I like Normani's. Great dancer, by the way. What I'd like to see from her as she continues her lane, because I also like her music video as well. I would just say she should be careful to make sure that she doesn't fall into the lane of just being a dancer who can kind of sing. You know, that's my only fear, that I think people are going to start putting her in that bubble. So just be careful. Add some emotion and personality as far as, how do I say it? Like, we'll talk about it in the live video, but I like Normani. She's somebody I'm rooting for. So the next live video, I think I'll do one next week. Remind me, we'll talk about that. Lizzo was fun to watch. Really great vocals too. Who else? What else was on? Oh, I enjoyed the throwback performance with like Queen Latifah, Naughty by Nature, and all of them. That was really cool to watch. Yeah, it was cool. The first Shawn Mendes performance, I don't remember the name of the song, but whatever it was, I thought the song was really upbeat and bright. I was like, okay, this is fun. I didn't see it because I was in the bathroom at the time that he was performing, but I could just hear it, and it sounded good. So I don't know what was going on stage, but it sounded good. So kudos to that performance. But overall, the VMAs, it was all right. It was better than last year. It was better than that Aretha tribute, because we remember what that was, right?
The worst that can happen is I can go back to getting robbed, held at gunpoint, and being mistaken for a prostitute in my third-floor walk-up that was also a crack house.
Yeah. Anyway, also, everybody in the Caribbean and in Florida, please be careful. As we know, they have Hurricane Dorian that is traveling. Please be safe. Please do what you need to do to make sure that you and your family are well off. So best wishes to all of you. Best wishes to everybody affected by all the crazy weather and all the crazy changes going on. I'm still doing a Jay-Z video, just not on this one because this one's too long. I still want to say my 2 cents. I'm waiting for the details of whatever deal he has to come out so I can really say how I feel, because my biggest fear is I'm going to do this video and spit all this hot air, and then whatever details come out are going to be the opposite of what I said, and I'm going to look crazy. So we'll wait and see. But anyway, that's all for now. Like I said, we'll do a live video next week. I'll do probably another video or two this week just to kind of play catch up. But yeah, share your 2 cents, and yeah, y'all just keep your heads on straight. There's a lot going on in the world. It's very disturbing. Anyway, I'm out. Subscribe.
See, because when you're on one page and I'm on the same page, we're talking about.
Cause when it gets down to the wire,